So good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, April 26, 2021. Time is 11:06 a.m. This is our weekly Commissioner Status Update. Attending Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Our first item is the restoration of the North Coast Hiawatha passenger train presentation with Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority Executive Committee members. This is a general discussion. Okay, Leslie, go.
Yeah, so I was called, I believe it was by Jerry, and we set up this meeting so we could hear more about this exciting proposal. Dave, will you lead us? Or who's going to lead us?
I would love to, thank you. And do you have the ability to see us, or do you just have audio?
We can see you.
Would it be possible for me to be allowed to share my screen?
Absolutely.
Yes. We'll get that done in about 20 seconds.
Okay. All right, it looks like I have been granted the ability to share, so let's see here. All right. And again, in the spirit of the times, you've probably heard this more than you would like to hear, but can you see my screen on your end?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it
Part
the
of it
Zoom?
anyway.
Well, hold on. Is it the Zoom screen? What are we supposed to be seeing?
A BSPRA, Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority logo.
Nope,
No.
You cannot see it.
not yet. Hang on. There we
you go.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you. And again, I'm Dave Strohmeyer. I'm chair of the Missoula Board of County Commissioners and also chairman of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. And thanks so much for carving out a few minutes for us to share what we have going on over here in Montana. So, what are we? As many of you know, we last saw passenger rail service through the southern part of Montana in 1979. And this was the North Coast Hiawatha route that would have connected Chicago all the way to the west coast via southern Montana, and also running parallel with the Empire Builder through Idaho and Washington and Oregon, and to points east beyond that. We lost service in 1979. The Empire Builder remained. It is currently one of the most popular and heavily used long-distance passenger rail routes in the nation. But the reality is, at least here in Montana, the majority of our population resides in the southern part of the state, adjacent to one of our most iconic national parks in this country, Yellowstone National Park, no longer rail service. And over the past 4 decades, there have been various attempts to try to bring passenger rail service back to the southern tier of Montana, mostly led by passionate individuals or advocacy groups. But what we have lacked is the institutional infrastructure or governance structure to sustain an initiative like this over time. Some of the most passionate advocates have literally died over that 40 years and have passed away. So we need some ability to carry this forward, and that is what we have undertaken this year. A statement like what you're seeing on the screen here, furthering this health, safety, and economic prosperity of the region, is probably pretty familiar to you all as commissioners, and much of the work that you do, as it is in my world. In this case, we're applying it to public transportation and passenger rail. Here in Montana, we have a statute on the books that allows for counties and only counties to come together and jointly establish regional rail authorities. I don't know if anything similar exists in the state of Idaho, but we have this as something available to us as county government, local government, and that's exactly what we've done over the past year. Beginning in 2019 and extending into last year, we undertook an effort to reach out to counties along the southern tier of the state and establish this rail authority, which we are calling the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. The blue line at the top of the screen is probably familiar. That is the route of the Empire Builder, which extends on into Idaho and Spokane and points west. The orangish line in the southern tier of the state is the North Coast Hiawatha, and also routes extending to Denver and Salt Lake City, which at one point in time saw passenger rail service. On November of last year, 12 counties spanning the entire 600-mile width of Montana came together and executed a joint resolution to establish the rail authority. As of next month, 2 additional counties, Carbon and Stillwater, just to the southwest of Billings, Montana, will also be added to the list of counties participating in the authority. What we are about is not necessarily being a railroad ourselves, but really serving in this coordination function between the host railroads, the federal government, Amtrak, local government, to do what we can to restore and reestablish passenger rail service. One of the big reasons why we are undertaking this is from an social and economic development standpoint. These numbers are a couple of years old and need to be updated, but even at that time, if you look at the Empire Builder from Chicago clear to Seattle and Portland, there are significant economic benefits that accrue to the communities and states through which that route passes. We are in the process of trying to undertake a similar socioeconomic study for the old North Coast Hiawatha route and its extension through southern Montana. But we can only imagine that due to the fact that the majority of our population is in the southern tier of the state, we would see at least as much, if not significantly greater, social and economic benefits to our region beyond what we see in the northern tier of Montana, the nearly $40 million that were listed here for economic benefits to the northern tier or the high line of the state. So, what are we doing here with you all today? We have reached out to some of your neighbors over in Bonner County. We are reaching out to counties in North Dakota. This is truly a regional effort. This is not just siloed in the state of Montana. What we're talking about is a multi-state regional effort to restore one of a key piece of our nation's long-distance intercity passenger rail network, and that is the North Coast Hiawatha route. The only way we're going to accomplish this is working together across state lines. And so what your nearby neighbors have agreed to do, and we are working with them as we speak to do this, is to craft a letter of support that would lend its support and that county commission support to our efforts with the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, restoration of the North Coast Hiawatha, and also we are encouraging folks to reach out to their, in your case, Idaho's congressional delegation and governor, urging them for restoration of the North Coast Hiawatha, and also expressing support for the Pioneer Route, because your neighbors to the south in Boise are very interested in restoring the Pioneer Route, which would extend from Salt Lake City up to Portland, Oregon, through one of the most populous regions of the state of Idaho. And again, this is a joint effort. It's not about one state trying to accomplish something at the exclusion of another, but looking at how we can enhance our overall transportation network in the greater Northwest region for the benefit of all of us. And again, we've been without passenger rail service for the past 4 decades. And we think that if ever there was a time to contemplate bringing it back, it is now. There are a number of moving pieces in the U.S. Congress as we speak, including development of a possible infrastructure package, of which passenger rail will be a component. Also, reauthorization of the Surface Transportation Bill this year. And in both of those cases, we see those as vehicles through which we can really create a transformative project for our region. Other directors of the Rail Authority, Jason, Bill, or Jerry, would you like to add anything?
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, I think one of the things that had been asked early, or of me in the conversation I had with Kootenai County was whether or not a facility or a station would be proposed for Post Falls. Sandpoint is in Bonner County, and it's I think probably close to 40 minutes drive, say from Coeur d'Alene or Post Falls. And I'm not certain if there has been traditionally a station in Post Falls. But I wanted to ask you a question about that. I neglected to bring it up when we talked earlier about this meeting. So what are your thoughts on that, Dave? What's the likelihood of establishing additional, or I guess you could say restoring unserved or depots along the route?
Well, and I think all options are on the table. We're dealing with somewhat of a blank slate here. Not entirely. We know of the communities that once had train depots or station stops in the past, and those would probably likely be the places in which a restored North Coast Hiawatha route would stop in the future. But in the spirit of not simply replicating what the empire builder always does and is doing, I think there would be a great opportunity for local governments to have a voice in really shaping the future and what that service would look like.
This is Bill Berg, Park County Commissioner. I live just outside of Gardner, Montana, where the rail actually arrived in 1883, and 118 years ago. This weekend, Teddy Roosevelt came in on the train and laid the cornerstone on the Roosevelt Arch. The Livingston Depot still stands. It's used as a museum these days, owned by the city of Livingston. They would be very excited to turn that back into a passenger depot. We've got some of the historical objects intact. But Livingston's a railroad town, and there's track length from here to the East Coast and here to the West Coast, and I just think it's a tremendous opportunity.
Jason?
Yeah, nothing really to add. I'll just piggyback what Jerry just brought up. I just haven't had the copy of the 2009 study, so I don't know if there one existed in 1979, but certainly in that 2009 study, they only had a Sandpoint station in Idaho, was the only station. But getting to what Dave's point is, that doesn't mean that that has to be the case going forward. If there's the local will and drive there in Kootenai County to get a station put on the route, then we're happy to hear it, and we're happy to help you guys try to, get that on as part of the final package or whatever comes out. But yeah, just because there wasn't one there before doesn't mean that there can't be one there in the future.
And Jason, could you just say a few words about your view over there in Dawson County in far eastern Montana and what rail has meant and could mean in the future for economic development?
Yeah, well, it'd be used for us over here. Obviously over here in eastern Montana, we are, we're in a part of the country that the U.S. Census Bureau still technically classifies as being frontier because our population density is so low out here in eastern Montana, western North Dakota. But from a tourism perspective and building our businesses, it'd just be fantastic. Here in Glendive, we have a major tourist attraction, Makoshka State Park. It's Montana's largest and most beautiful state park. It's 11,000 acres of the most spectacular badlands you're going to see anywhere. I've visited with plenty of folks who come through and tell me, wow, your badlands are way nicer than badlands in South Dakota or badlands in North Dakota. We really like this place. And we have dinosaurs in it too, so that's kind of fantastic. But we have this asset, but we're kind of out here on the ragged edge where we have the interstate coming through town, and we're getting a lot of people now. We got 100,000 people a year coming into that state park, but we just know that we could have so many more coming if we had passenger rail service through here. Just another reason, another way for people to get to Glendive in eastern Montana, another way for them to stop here. And besides that, in our ability to build up our community as a tourism destination, as a visitor destination, and enhance the economic opportunities our local folks have here in our community to drive business coming off of that train. There's also a lot to be said for transportation equity and a real need for that here. You know, here in eastern Montana, Dave is sitting there in Missoula, and Dave is over 500 miles away from me here in Glendive, Montana. It is almost as close for me to drive to Denver as it is for me to drive to Missoula. And that is the only way I can get to Dave in Missoula, or to you good folks over there in Kootenai County right now, is to drive. There is no flight. There is no other option. It is a car or a truck, and that's it. And it's a long, long ways. And as you guys all know, for about 6 months out of the year, that hundreds of miles of drive can become a pretty dicey proposition when you've got, 4, 5, 6 inches of snow covering the road between here and there. So, we can't get from here in Glendive, we can't get to our state capital except by car. We can't get to Missoula except by car. We can't get to Bozeman except by car. We can't get to Sandpoint or Coeur d'Alene except by car. It's the only way we have to travel. So it will be for transportation equity purposes of giving our residents here in this very rural part of the country another option for transportation, a quicker way, another way to get from point A to point B besides driving, which again is a very long drive. You've got a lot of people here, a lot of older people, seniors, veterans who can't necessarily drive and certainly can't drive during the winter. Who would utilize this train. We know they'd use it. We talk to them on the street. They're like, man, I wish we had that. I remember back in 1979 when we had it. It was great. Now it's gone. Wouldn't it be nice to have it back? And I'll just add one last thing quick. I know I get going on this, but for you guys over there in Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint in that region, I said this to the folks in Sandpoint last week. Your part of Idaho, for people in eastern Montana, western North Dakota, having lived here for a better part of a decade now, people here really like to go to your part of the world. They really like to go visit Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint and that northern Idaho region. It's a major tourist destination for the folks here in eastern Montana, western North Dakota. But again, right now, the only way they can get to you is to drive. So you would have more tourists coming from this part of the country. And so you'd strengthen your tourism and your business connections with this part of Montana and North Dakota by having this service restored. I'll end it right there.
Jason. And we'd be happy to take any questions from you commissioners.
Any questions?
I guess, remind me, you've already talked to Post Falls City Council? The mayor there?
Jerry, I have not. Jerry, you're muted. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, no, we've not spoken to anybody in Post Falls.
Okay. So Kootenai County, or the commissioners are the first stop in Kootenai County that you've on
Right,
your...
that is correct.
Okay.
Bill?
And of course, Bill and I are a little bit biased working in county government. I think we always like to, if possible, touch bases with the county commissioners first and then branch out from there.
Okay.
Bill, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Yeah, this is Chris Filios. I'm the chairman. I like the idea, but then I'm a little biased because I grew up with public transit in New York City, but I think your arguments are well-founded. It is very difficult to not just commute within, if you want to call it commute, or travel within the state of Montana, but certainly throughout this western region. And so I can appreciate what you're trying to do, and I have been on the Hiawatha Trail, so the ability to, or at least the idea of restoring it isn't a bad one. Actually, it's probably clearly the most likely approach. Where do you see this going from here? What is it you'd like of us? Do you want us to pass a resolution, write our congressman, all of the above? Help us out.
Yeah, a little bit of all of the above. We can supply you after this meeting with some draft text that we've prepared that you could take a look at and craft into your own letter of support to your congressional delegation. A resolution in support of the efforts of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority would also certainly be another option. Any sort of a statement of support to that end would be appreciated and useful. Jerry, Bill, Jason?
So Dave,
Close it up. We're just looking to generate a spark here, and we've got a pretty good start. We have broad-based support across the state of Montana, as you saw, but we're connected by that rail line, and there's just so much opportunity for North Dakota, Idaho, Washington, over to Minnesota, and Illinois.
And we have been in close contact with the city council president of Boise, Idaho, Elaine Clegg, who's been in touch with Senator Crapo's office, who seems to be supportive of this effort and this undertaking. And so I think, as we all know, it's a whole lot more impactful if the congressional delegations in the specific state are hearing directly from their constituents, as opposed to us over here in Montana engaging those delegations in other states. So I think the answer, Commissioner, to your question is all of the above in terms of outreach to your delegation. And again, we'll provide you with some sample language that could be used for that. And basically a statement of support, or a resolution for that matter, in support of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, which all goes into the equation of lending legitimacy to the effort that we're undertaking here.
Dave, what other states have you pitched this to thus far?
What other states? Washington. We've been conducting outreach with North Dakota. We've been in touch with Minnesota as of late. And we'll be conducting outreach there also. And eventually Wisconsin and at least part of Illinois, insofar as the line that we're talking about will connect up all the way to Chicago.
How's the reaction been so far?
It's been a mixed bag in terms of certainly the folks in Washington, Oregon, Minnesota have been advocacy groups that we've been engaging with. We are just now starting, and they've, needless to say, been passionately supportive. We are reaching out to members of Congress in those adjoining states by way of some of the folks with the Rail Passengers Association who've met with delegates from those states. My understanding is that almost without exception, they've run into support from your Idaho delegation, from the North Dakota delegation. We are reaching out to folks in Utah and trying to gauge their level of interest, because like I mentioned, we are looking at north-south connectivity. There are certainly those that do not want to, and understandably, do not want to trade off the Empire Builder for another route. And so that concern is heard, and we are just continuing to emphasize that this is not a zero-sum game of trading off one line, one route for another. It's a matter of strengthening our overall national network by adding additionality to it. And even the 2009 feasibility study for the North Coast Hiawatha indicated that there would not be any sort of diminishment of service for the Empire Builder that would jeopardize its success and viability.
Okay. Leslie, Bill, any other questions?
No.
So Dave, thank you. Please send us any information you might have, suggestions for a resolution and or any letters of support, and we can certainly take it up as a board and go from there.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners, for allowing us the time to parachute in for a few minutes. And
We might have a question from the
additional
audience.
information headed your way.
Yeah, Dave, we
Dave,
might have a question from the
here. Go
audience.
right ahead.
Hi, who's on the line?
Oh, hi. Hi, this is Jody Beasy. I was just wondering if it would be appropriate if I asked a question.
Yeah, go right ahead, Jody.
I had a question. I was just curious, was there a discussion around funding and whether or not there were conversations with the DOT and there already have been existing conversations around light rail and those types of public transportation options within the area. And I was just curious if they had conversations with STA or the tribe or others who are providing public transportation.
No, we've not had conversation, at least in the state of Idaho, with any of those entities. I've been in contact with state DOTs here in Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming, and the state of Washington for that matter. Not in the state of Idaho. You mentioned tribes and tribal nation involvement. The Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes are enthusiastically supportive of our efforts here in Montana. And I think, and this speaks something that Jason mentioned earlier in terms of transportation options and equity for folks, is how can we provide transportation to communities of interest that might have limited or few other transportation options. So from that standpoint, the tribes are a strong player in what we're doing here in Montana. As far as funding goes, what we are basically looking at is a long distance route in excess of 750 miles in length, which means that it would be primarily, if not exclusively, funded by Amtrak and the federal government, as opposed to state-supported systems, which would comprise those shorter distance commuter networks, or take the Cascades in Oregon and Washington. That's an Amtrak run system, but it is a state-supported system that heavily depends on state involvement of Oregon and Washington. That is not what we are looking at here. We are looking at restoring a route that would be long distance and regional and, in fact, national in character, such that it would make a lot of sense that we have significant federal involvement in that.
Okay. So I guess I'm going to have to cut it off here. Jody, if you have additional questions, you can either funnel them through me or contact Chairman Dave Strohmeyer directly, and we can go from there. Dave, thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you all.
Dave, I'd like to offer one more item, and that is we've gotten a great deal of enthusiastic support from Amtrak, who has said, who has supported this publicly. We've gotten an equal amount of support from the Federal Railroad Administration. So we can say that there's been a significant amount of federal energy at the bureaucratic level to move this thing forward. And of course, your help with your congressional delegation will help us kind of move the other half of this through the relevant federal agency.
Thank you again, gentlemen. By the way, that question from Jody, I should point out that Jody is our director of the Resource Management Office, and specifically, I guess, specifically our public transit system here. So thank you again, everyone. Appreciate it. Look forward to any information you can provide us.
Okay.
Have
Thank
a great
you all.
day. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Goodbye.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to our agenda. So why don't we skip to item 3? Let's do our pending items review first. Okay, why don't we do that and get that behind us? Okay, so the first item is County Form of Government Study Commission. We'll be coming back to that in item 3 as soon as we conclude these other items. Facilities expansion, Leslie.
Yeah, just waiting for the long-range study to be completed.
Okay, when is that due?
Well, it's not due because the legislature is still in session. So we were able to give them more time, which they were grateful for, because they're finding it's a little bit more complicated than they set out.
So it's back to what they decide for property tax?
Well, separate. I mean, they're doing a long-range study to tell us what movements can be made and with Kootenai County North and those kinds of things. But the deadline was moved back for them because we're still waiting on property tax legislation.
Property tax from the state. Okay, legislature. Pack Airport lease?
Yep, still with Stephen and Wally together.
Okay. The audio upgrade, we're going to delay that until June, is that correct? Okay. Possible delay, okay. The reason for that, Nancy, again? Okay, good. All right, thank you. Financial snapshot, that's due next week, I believe,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, next
First
Monday.
status update of the month.
Yep.
Ballot bond language?
Yep, same thing, on hold until legislature recesses, and same with building financing.
Okay, that's also on hold. Okay, let's move on. Thank you. So we're going to move on to optional form of government study commission members, action item. So we decided last week that each of us would provide 3 names, plus an alternate. So, but just some rules of play here. When we open up for public comment, it's public comment. What it's not is not a public Q&A. Occasionally, we'll take questions. But if you do have questions, you can write us individually or collectively. And one of the reasons we do that is once we get into Q&A, we get into a tit for tat, the clock is ticking, and we need to convene the meeting. Sometimes it can actually degrade into chaos. So if you have questions, feel free to write us individually or all of us, and we certainly do our best to get back with you, but you're certainly welcome to comment. Okay, so let's start with, Leslie, you were ready last week, so do you want to go first?
No, that's okay. I can go last because it's not my deal.
Oh, okay. Bill?
Sure, be happy to. My first choice was Brian J. Cleary, who is an attorney in Post Falls. And he's been here for a number of years working on federal cases. My second is Bob Fish, who's been a member of the library board and is currently up for re-election. And he has a long Republican history. The last is Kristen Wing. And Kristen has 35 years of healthcare experience and management. She was recruited to join an effort to develop a new medical school in Washington State University, Spokane. And then my last, the alternate, is Joan Gettner, who has been, as of late, chairman of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the airport.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about Brian Cleary and Bob Fish
I like it.
by way of experience and/or education?
Well, Cleary is an attorney.
Okay.
He didn't go into, in the short little bio for today, he didn't go into all his qualifications, but obviously he has a law degree. Important part, he has no predisposition toward changing the current form of government and intends to work with the other commission members to objectively assess and timely report to the public and the commissioners on the assigned task. He did give me a long resume, which I'll be happy to provide.
No, that's fine. Go right ahead. Bob?
Bob Fish, he's a veteran. He spent 40 years in banking in Southern California. He's been on the Central Committee of LA and the Central Committee of San Diego.
Republican?
Republican, yeah.
Central.
He's moved here 6 years ago and has been very active locally in the Pachyderm Club.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
Okay. So I'll go next. Okay, so my 3. First is Dave Bodding. Dave Bodding lives up in Athol. And he's got extensive experience in management. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree and an MBA. And understands organizational theory. He currently serves as a volunteer on the Architectural Control Committee of the Landings and is president of their local homeowners association. In addition, he helped co-found a manufacturing company, and that manufacturing company also went international. He did grow up in Connecticut. His family moved to North San Diego County when he was in high school. He's lived in this area for 45 years. He lived there for 45 years and moved here about 10 years ago, okay? The second is Dave Levine. Dave Levine, some of you might know the name. Dave is the chairman of our planning commission here at the county, which deals largely with land use issues. He also chairs Community Guardians, which is a volunteer organization that basically helps folks who are somewhat handicapped and need the guardianship to be able to manage their affairs. He has over 35 years' experience running large multi-departmental operations for a major airline, including leadership roles in HR, training, contact center, and planning. He's developed strategies in several different departments. He does hold a BS degree in geography from the University of Idaho. He went to school here and then took jobs elsewhere and then came back to Idaho. So he's been in Idaho for, they retired here actually, he and his wife almost 11 years ago. Total number of years in Idaho is 16, okay? Also, Phil Ward. Phil Ward has been with us. He's been in the county now for 5 years. His professional career began with the Miami-Dade, as in Florida, county government. He was employed as an administrator, ending as a senior administrative officer and division chief after 6 years of service. He then entered private practice, spent almost 40 years as a land planning consultant. During this period, he served on numerous public boards, and was elected to the Miami Springs City Council. He holds a BA in political science from the University of Miami, a master's in public administration, and credits toward a PhD from Florida International University. He's also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, et cetera. And by the way, Phil Ward is also a Vietnam veteran. Okay, and my final one is, my alternate is Sherry Zhao. Sherry Zhao received her BS in chemistry, MS in biology, and went on to attend medical school and practiced, actually attended medical school in Texas. Her Idaho history began when she moved to Mullen, Idaho, practiced family medicine for a year at the Silverton Medical Clinic, then moved to Coeur d'Alene in 1989, where she opened a solo practice. She joined up with Dr. Jack Riggs and his team several years later. She left medical practice and began teaching biology courses at North Idaho College in 2003 and retired from NIC in 2018. She's currently on the board of directors of Heritage Health, board of trustees at Kootenai Electric Corp., and volunteers in other capacities as well. So that is Dr. Sherry Zhao is my alternate, and that completes mine. Go right ahead, Leslie.
Okay. I have Dr. Kurt Anderson, former chiropractor and now a practitioner and active thought leader in site reliability community. So that's really high-tech level stuff that I can't even tell you all the things. Board of Directors of Advanced Computing Systems Association and the Committee Against Unsolicited Commercial Email, previously on the board for Mobile Messaging Malware Anti-Abuse Working Group. His written work has appeared in a variety of published books by O'Reilly, and Kurt has spoken internationally on various aspects of reliability, authentication, and security. So that's all that Nancy Pluff may know, some of that background. Tamara Bateson earned a Bachelor of Science degree in biology, worked in the medical field managing multiple medical practices. She now assists a local realtor broker in creating and maintaining all the files for biennial audits. She's well skilled in analysis and comprehensive research. And then Bryant Bushling is an attorney, and he has been in the prosecutor's office, and he has been doing that for about 38 years. And he's been involved in investigating and prosecuting public officials, including police officers, gang members, and supervising other deputy prosecutors. And he was also involved in defense work. And then my alternate is Bruce Matari, a Washington, D.C. native, but a business owner here and employer in Coeur d'Alene. His career includes working for demographic data, investment, publishing, and finance companies, and he has an MBA with an emphasis in finance. I do want to say to all the people who reached out to me who wanted to do this, I'm sorry I couldn't pick all of you. There was about 12 that it was really a difficult decision and one that I struggled with for a long time. But I encourage everybody who wants to be involved to still be engaged in this. And so that's where I'm at.
So that's it. Got 'em? Tina? Okay. Anything else? Public comment. Feel free. This is your time. William, did you want to come forward? Yeah, you want to come up to the mic?
It's William Coeur d'Alene. My first comment is about that railway thing, that presentation that they made. The last week, the Biden administration, if you guys watch any national news, they actually put out this message that they want to revamp a nationwide like railway system. And so I think I don't know if this is related, this project, but the fact that it's completely federally funded kind of sounds like maybe there's some coordination between this project and the Biden administration. I don't know. Might be something interesting to look into. What's also interesting is that you got to ask yourself, like, why railways? I mean, they said the railways in Montana have been dead for 40 years. Why is that? Well, 40 years ago, we had the popularization of cars and automaking. That's why we don't have railways. And there's a reason for that. So why is it that someone would want to have railways in America that spans all the way across America to allow anyone to travel? Because you don't have to have a driver's license to get on a railway, right? You just have to have some government ID or something like that, which is not a driver's license. You got to ask yourself why. Why they want railways? It's a kind of a regressive like form of transportation, isn't it? If you look at the southern border, things that are happening, we have a lot of new people that want to get in here, want to get into America. And, my parents were immigrants themselves. And, I do have sympathy for them. And I try to empathize with them. But at the same time, I think there's probably some reasons that, some good, I don't know. Hopefully that kind of gives you some guidance to kind of look into this. It just sounds awfully fishy to build a railway that connects like from Illinois to like Washington. It sounds awfully fishy, and I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Name and town, please.
Good afternoon. My name's Richard Price. I live here in Coeur d'Alene. And just a brief comment on the railways. So while I don't know enough about it to have formed an opinion yet, after watching that, just some thoughts ran through my mind. I guess it was the argument for it included we would get a whole bunch more people from Bonners, Sandpoint, Boise, etc. And then it was mentioned Washington to Chicago, and in my mind I was thinking, well, that includes from Chicago to Idaho. But the real question is this. What's the cost involved? And it's still in my memory when about 30 years ago, when air travel became much less expensive, Amtrak had a heck of a time, maybe getting bailed out by the federal government. So what's the cost involved in this? And then the time involved in this, are people ready for that? And then I drew this comparison. He kept saying 40 years ago. And I remember less than 40, but 40 years ago, we had rotary phones too. And while I could argue that maybe going back to rotary phones today might have some social benefit, nevertheless, I just don't, I don't see that happening, and it wouldn't be accepted. So why a slow form of transportation like this? And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Anyone else? Anyone online?
Oh.
Yeah. Carla, come right forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Carla Matari. I'm also the president of Kootenai County Republican Women. And while at the beginning the presentation seemed very exciting about being able to access the trail easily, and but then as the presentation kept going forward, I have to agree with Mr. Filius that it's concerning to have public transportation closer to our community. I know, Mr. Brooks, you have helped us fight unfortunately unsuccessfully, but you have helped us fight the transportation, the transit in, the transit center. And now it is concerning to have, as busy as we are, I don't see people in the community, people in my group, I don't see them. Their concerns are not with like, let's bring more tourists. Right. Their concerns are like, oh my gosh, I can't find a parking spot downtown or like a place to eat. And every time I hit traffic, those are the concerns that we have, is the growth. And especially when it's not necessarily transportation just from point A to point B, but it's a transportation system that will take us all the way out to the East Coast in Chicago. That is very concerning. Coming from the Washington, D.C. area, I see how normally the public transportation doesn't add to the community. It actually affects the community adversely. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm on the phone. This is Sandy White.
Yes, go right ahead, Sandy.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to just mention that I noticed that Bob Fish is a candidate, and I don't know anything about him personally, and so this isn't against him or what he stands for, but I'm just concerned that a candidate would have an unfair advantage in an election if they were on a committee like this. So that's all I want to say. Other than, I wish this wasn't happening in the first place. But that aside. Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks for your comment. Anyone else? Ma'am? No, go ahead. Come on.
Hi, I'm Sandy Turner, Kootenai County.
Yes, ma'am.
Coeur d'Alene. It was interesting, the comments about the trains coming into town, and I hadn't thought this till I heard other comments, that once they get here, then how do they get to the next place? They're stuck at the train station, so do we have a bus system to support them? Is going to put the Ubers into business? So that's really a concern. I had a wonderful trip on the Empire Builder 4 summers ago, a 25-hour trip from La Havre to Milwaukee, and it was fabulous. But the one thing we saw that was startling is all the unused cars piled up on the railroads, just tons of them. So that's a comment on that. The other is that you've heard this before, but changing the county government, I make a comment on that. We stand here to object to this change in county government, as we've done before, not only here, but at many of the meetings around the county where commissioners were invited to speak, and it was shown there very much that we oppose for this. And one thing I heard when all your nominees that you named, I didn't hear one person that studied political science. So I'm really curious about health, planning. There were some lawyers, so that's closer, but nothing about political science.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. I had one or two that majored in political science, but go ahead.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Thank you. So we who stand to protest this unnecessary waste of taxpayers' money and the commissioner's duty to direct public funds stand not for any party, we stand for the people. We have a one-sided media, which is really unfortunate, so we are standing for the people who just read the one side, they don't have an opportunity. We, the people, we ask, we request, under the authority of the Constitution of the United States and Idaho, that we drop this action immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? You wanted to speak, so you might as well come forward.
Commissioners, I normally don't do this. I do work for the Board of Commissioners, but stepping out of that role just as a resident, just because I've heard a lot of concern here. My family, as far as the train issue, we have ridden the trains extensively. It's actually one of my favorite modes of travel. For the people who are concerned about it bringing people from the East Coast, I just hoped it might be helpful to understand that that route already exists. My last train was from Chicago to Spokane. Those trains are typically difficult to get on because they're frequently full. They're very heavily traveled. In our experience, it's been predominantly with families, people who are and just enjoy that slow mode of travel. So I would need to look into this more. I don't know if I'm for this, against this, anything else, but I think it's interesting. But it didn't sound like they're looking to expand a lot of that, just get that. It's a different route from what currently exists. So I appreciate you at least listening to them, because that was interesting and may or may not be a good thing. So thank you.
We'll find out. Anyone else? Not hearing of anyone. Okay. 11:57, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.